My sister destroyed my life, disowned me, and let me rot. Now wants me to save them from homelessness. Ever have your entire family believe the worst thing imaginable about you? Throw you out without a second thought? Then show up years later asking for money? That was my Tuesday. Before I get into this, you need to understand where I'm coming from. I'm Marcus, 28, and I grew up in what I thought was a stable family. Upper middle class suburb outside Chicago. My parents seemed to have it together, at least on the surface. Dad worked as a financial advisor at a respected firm downtown, earned a solid living for our family. Mom worked part-time as a realtor, but she was more focused on maintaining the family image, which meant joining every community organization available and making sure our family looked perfect on Christmas cards. I was their biological son, the golden boy who did everything right. Straight A's without much effort, naturally athletic, polite to adults. I wasn't perfect by any means. Got into plenty of trouble as a teenager, sneaking beers with friends, throwing the occasional house party, but nothing major. Nothing that would threaten the family reputation my mother worked so hard to maintain. When I was 10, they adopted Lily, 3 years old at the time. Mom had always wanted a daughter. I remember the day they brought her home. This tiny little thing with big brown eyes who had everyone wrapped around her finger within minutes. And I'll admit it, I was kind of a jerk to her at first. Suddenly, I wasn't the center of attention anymore. Everything became about Lily's first day of preschool, her dance recital, her cute new outfit. Looking back, it was typical sibling jealousy. But at the time, I felt replaced. As we grew older, I thought we had a decent sibling relationship. Nothing extraordinary, just normal. We fought sometimes, but I always looked out for her. When she was in second grade, some kids started pulling her hair and pushing her on the playground. I was in ninth grade at the time. I remember walking her to elementary school one day and having a very clear conversation with the little punk. Nobody messed with her after that. I even taught her basic self-defense moves, how to throw a proper punch if she absolutely had to. I was her big brother, you know? By my senior year of college, I was crushing it. Captain of our Division II baseball team, solid prospects for minor league ball. Had a 3.85 GPA in business administration with a minor in finance. A solid group of friends. The kind of guys who'd help you move or pick you up at 3 a.m. if your car broke down. I spent a lot of time in the gym. Been lifting seriously since high school. By college, I was in the best shape of my life, benching 315 for reps, squatting 405, deadlifting 495. Everyone chases that V-taper, right? Broad shoulders, narrow waist, visible abs year-round. I'm not trying to sound arrogant here, just painting a picture of where I was in life. I dated a few girls seriously over the years, but nothing stuck. Honestly, I was mostly focused on my future. Dad had connections at several investment firms in the Chicago area, and after graduation, I was set to start a management training program at one of the biggest. My plan was simple. Graduate college, maybe play baseball for a few more years if I had the chance, then pursue a career in finance. Eventually meet the right girl, get married, have kids, live the American dream. That was the plan anyway. By then, Lily was 15, a sophomore in high school. She'd grown into this dramatic theater kid, always in a school play, over-emotional about everything. But that's what teenagers are like, right? She had her own friends, her own life. When I came home from college on breaks, we'd catch up over dinner. Normal sibling stuff. Or so I thought. Looking back, there were signs I missed. Her jealousy when Mom and Dad bragged about my baseball achievements. Her small comments about how easy I had it. Her tendency to make up elaborate stories about things that happened at school that couldn't possibly be true. But hindsight is 20/20, right? It was a Tuesday in October during my senior year. I'd just finished a brutal practice where Coach worked us into the ground after we lost a weekend series to our conference rivals. My legs felt like jelly. My shoulder ached from too many bullpen sessions. But in a good way. You'd pushed your body to its limits, and it responded. I took a shower, threw on jeans and a hoodie, and checked my phone on my way out to my truck. The F-150 my parents had helped me buy for my 20th birthday. 37 missed calls, 54 texts. Messages from family members and friends with phrases like, "You sick fuck," "How could you?" and "You're dead." My heart started racing. My first thought was that someone had died, either grandma or grandpa. I called Dad immediately. "What the hell is going on?" I asked. When he answered, his voice was ice cold, a tone I'd never heard.
Get your ass home, now. Don't you dare go anywhere else." Then he hung up. I stood in the parking lot staring at my phone, trying to figure out what was happening. I called Mom. No answer. I called my best friend from high school who still lived near my parents. He didn't answer either. It was like everyone had just decided I was radioactive. I drove the 20 minutes home in a haze, stomach in knots the entire time. NPR was on the radio, but I couldn't hear a word they were saying. When I pulled into the driveway, I saw my Uncle Mike's truck and several other cars. Uncle Mike, my dad's younger brother, a construction contractor with a temper, had never really warmed up to me. Before I could get out, Uncle Mike rushed at me from the front porch, yanked open my truck door, grabbed my shirt, and slammed me against the side of the truck. "I'm gonna kill you," he screamed, inches from my face. His spit hit my cheek. I could smell alcohol in his breath. His eyes were wild, unlike anything I'd ever seen. I could have easily broken free. Mike was 50 and out of shape. I was a 22-year-old athlete in my prime. But I was too stunned to react. Dad and my other uncle, Steve, pulled him off me. "Inside, now," Dad said, without looking me in the eye. I walked up the front steps and into the living room.
It was packed. Mom sitting on the couch, eyes red and swollen from crying. Both sets of grandparents present, looking grim. Aunts, uncles, even close family friends. And Lily, my sister, curled up against Grandma, sobbing into her shoulder. When I walked in, the room went completely silent. Everyone stared at me with horror and disgust that made my blood run cold. "What the hell is going on?" I demanded, scanning the room for any explanation. Mom looked up, her face twisted with fury and hatred I'd never seen before. "How could you? Your own sister? What are you talking about?" Dad stepped forward, his normally composed demeanor as a financial consultant gone. He looked like he wanted to tear me apart with his bare hands. "Lily told us everything about how you've been coming into her room at night for years." The accusation hit me like a freight train. I couldn't breathe. The room started spinning. "What? That's insane. I never touched her." Lily was sobbing harder now. "You said no one would believe me. You said you'd hurt me if I told. You said it was our secret." "That's," I screamed, my shock giving way to rage. "I never said that. I've never done anything to her. What the hell is going on?" Uncle Mike lunged at me again, but was held back by Dad and Uncle Steve. "My buddy's a cop. You're going to prison, you piece of shit. They're gonna love you there." I tried to defend myself, to show them how ridiculous this was. But it was like talking to a brick wall. Nobody was listening. Lily kept adding more details, making up stuff that never happened. She said I first touched her when she was 10 and I was home from college for Christmas break. That it had happened dozens of times since then. That I threatened to hurt her, Mom, and Dad if she ever told anyone. Every word was a lie. But they were all nodding, comforting her, glaring at me. It felt surreal, like I'd slipped into an alternate reality where everything was backwards. Then, Dad snapped. He'd always been controlled, never violent, but something broke in him. He walked right up to me and threw a right hook that would make a heavyweight boxer proud. Caught me square in the jaw. I went down, tasting blood where my teeth had cut into my cheek. "Get your shit and get out. You're no son of mine," he yelled, standing over me, flexing his hand. Mom had already packed some of my clothes into trash bags. They were sitting by the door. Dad grabbed my wallet and pulled out every card with his name on it. Credit cards, health insurance. "Dad, please, this isn't true," I begged, blood dripping from my split lip. "You've known me my whole life. You know I would never do something like this." He grabbed my shirt, hauled me to the door, and threw me down the front steps. I landed hard on my shoulder, felt something crack. Turned out to be a minor separation. The bags of clothes followed, then my baseball gear. "If you ever come near this family again, I'll kill you myself," he said, slamming the door. I sat on the lawn, blood on my face, shoulder throbbing, neighbors peeking through windows at the commotion. My entire life had just collapsed in less than an hour. That night, I sat in my truck in the baseball field parking lot, trying to process what had happened. Couldn't sleep. I kept replaying the scene, trying to figure out how Lily could do this, how my parents could believe her without questioning it. By morning, my jaw was swollen and purple. My shoulder hurt so badly I could barely move my arm. I called a teammate, Ryan, and he let me crash on his couch for a week. His roommates weren't thrilled, but they tolerated me. I tried calling, texting, emailing everyone in my family. Grandparents, aunts, uncles, cousins, people I'd known all my life. No responses except one text from Dad. Contact us again and I'll file a restraining order. You're dead to us. Ryan tried to help. Dude, you need to go to the police, file the report about your dad hitting you. Get ahead of this thing. But I couldn't. Something inside me refused to accept this was really happening. I kept expecting my parents to come to their senses, to see how absurd it was. And honestly, I was terrified. What if Lily didn't back down? What if they believed her over me? How do you prove a negative? How do you prove you didn't do something? 2 weeks later, I got an email from the university. My tuition payment for the semester was overdue. My parents had canceled the mid-semester payment. I went to the financial aid office and tried to get an emergency loan. But without a cosigner and with minimal credit history, I was screwed. I had to drop most of my classes to part-time status so I could work full-time to afford even that. Coach was understanding at first, let me stay on the team. But I missed so many practices due to my new job, security at a bar, that I barely played. My grades plummeted. Went from dean's list to barely passing. Friends started avoiding me. Stories were spreading. Someone in the family told someone who told someone else. You know how it goes. Nobody called me a predator to my face, but I saw how people looked at me. How conversations stopped when I entered rooms. How girls would move away if I sat next to them in class. 4 months later, my truck broke down. Engine block cracked. Thousands to repair. Couldn't afford it. I lost my delivery job that I'd picked up on top of the bar security gig. Got evicted from the rundown apartment I shared with 2 other guys because I couldn't make rent. I started sleeping in the baseball team's equipment shed after Coach gave me the code. Showering in the locker room, eating 1 meal a day at the cafeteria with the last of my meal plan. Coach found me there one night in February. It was below freezing outside, and I was wearing 3 hoodies and a sleeping bag, using my duffel bag as a pillow. Instead of getting angry, he sat down next to me on the floor. "Son, what the hell happened to you?" he asked, his voice genuine and concerned. I told him everything. The accusation, my parents' reaction, being cut off, losing my truck, the apartment. He was the first person to actually listen to the whole story. When I finished, he didn't accuse me of lying. He didn't say he believed me either. Just nodded, sat in silence for a moment. "You can stay here until end of semester. After that, I'll help you figure something out." The next day, he brought me a space heater and a decent air mattress, started inviting me to dinner at his house once a week. His wife would always pack leftovers for me to take home. It wasn't much, but it was something. Someone cared. I finished the year with a 2.1 GPA. Barely avoided academic probation, but I was done with baseball. The fire was gone. Coach set me up with a summer job at a wilderness program for troubled teens in Colorado. Ironic, right? But it paid cash, provided housing in a staff cabin, and kept me fed. That fall, I didn't go back to school. Stayed at the wilderness program, became a full-time guide. Spent days hiking mountains, teaching survival skills to rich kids whose parents didn't know what else to do with them. I rebuilt myself physically, carrying 50-pound packs up mountains, chopping wood, building shelters. It was brutal work. Gained 15 pounds of pure muscle in 6 months. At night, I'd get blackout drunk with the other guides. On days off, I experimented with whatever I could get my hands on. Weed, LSD, mushrooms, coke. I wasn't careful. Didn't care. I was trying to numb myself to the reality that my old life was gone forever. After a guide died in a climbing accident that I might have prevented if I hadn't been nursing a hangover, the program director pulled me aside. "Marcus, you're one of our best guides when you're on. The kids respect you. You're solid in the field.
but you're a liability when you're like this. I can't have you responsible for kids' lives when you're self-destructing. I got fired the next day. I spent the next year living in my beater car, a 1998 Honda Civic I'd bought for $1,200 cash.
Worked whatever jobs I could find. Bar bouncer, event security, day labor, construction, any job where I could use my size and nobody asked too many questions about my background. I avoided women entirely, avoided families. I'd literally walk out of a restaurant if a child sat too close to my table. The fear of being accused again was paralyzing. I had nightmares about being in prison, other inmates finding out what I was there for. I'd wake up in a cold sweat, heart pounding so hard I thought I was having a heart attack. One night, I was working security at a college bar in Fort Collins. I recognized a guy from my old university who'd played football while I was there. He recognized me too. Started telling his friends who I was, what I'd been accused of doing. By closing time, they were all staring at me, making comments loud enough for me to hear. Predator. Sick fuck. Someone should teach him a lesson. I tried to ignore it. Did my job. At 2 a.m., I walked the last patrons out and was heading to my car when they jumped me in the parking lot. 3 guys from earlier. They'd been waiting, called me a pedophile, a predator, said they'd make sure I couldn't hurt anyone else. I fought back. Landed some solid punches. Definitely broke one guy's nose, but it was 3-on-1, and they had the element of surprise. I ended up with 3 broken ribs, a fractured eye socket, a dislocated shoulder, and a concussion. The guy with the broken nose must have panicked because they ran when a car pulled into the parking lot. The driver called an ambulance. I spent 2 nights in the hospital, got released with nowhere to go, no health insurance, and a $17,000 medical bill I had no way to pay. The painkillers they gave me barely touched the pain. It couldn't work because of my injuries. Slept in my car in Walmart parking lots, taking sponge baths in gas station bathrooms when I could lift my arms. I decided I was done. Just done. It was raining, middle of the night. I drove to an old bridge outside town, high enough for jumping, parked my Civic, walked to the middle, climbed over the railing. My ribs screamed in pain with every movement. I don't know how long I stood there, rain soaking me, staring down at the black water below. I had my phone in my hand. No texts, no missed calls, 3 years of complete silence from my family. Nobody was coming to save me. Nobody cared if I lived or died. Bit cold for a swim, don't you think? The voice startled me so badly I almost slipped. I gripped the railing with my good arm, pain shooting through my broken ribs. Turned to see an older man, 70s maybe, standing there in a raincoat, holding a fishing rod. "Go away," I muttered, my voice shaking. "Can't do that, son," he said calmly, like we were having a normal conversation on a nice day. "See, if I go away and you jump, that makes me responsible in a way. It's not your problem. It became my problem when I saw you. That's how life works." He moved closer, not threatening, just steady. "My name's Frank, retired Marine, seen plenty of men at their breaking point. You want to tell me what's got you standing on the wrong side of this railing? You wouldn't understand. Try me." I don't know why, but I told him everything. The accusation, getting thrown out, the last 3 years. Maybe because I figured I'd be dead soon anyway. Maybe because he was a stranger who didn't immediately treat me like a monster. Maybe because something in his eyes reminded me of my grandfather, the only person in my family who would have believed me if he hadn't been suffering from dementia. When I finished, he just nodded, like my old coach did. Then he said something I'll never forget. "Son, you've been carrying this alone long enough. Put down the weight for one night. Come have a hot meal, dry clothes. We'll talk about it with clear heads tomorrow. Why would you help someone like me? You don't know if I'm telling the truth.
Frank's eyes were sharp even in the dim light. Been reading men's faces for 50 years, in combat and in peace. You're either telling the truth or you're the best damn liar I've ever met. Either way, death is permanent. Food isn't. I could have ignored him. Could have jumped anyway. Sometimes I wonder why I didn't. But something about his certainty, his calm in the face of my storm, made me climb back over that rail. Frank's house was small but tidy. Everything military precision. Books neatly aligned on shelves, shoes parallel to the door. He gave me dry clothes, belonged to a son who had died in Afghanistan 10 years prior.
Made me take a hot shower while he cooked. That night, I fell asleep on Frank's couch. Actually slept, for the first time in what felt like years. The next morning, he made me breakfast. Eggs, bacon, coffee so strong it could wake the dead. Then he offered me a job. Said he owned a small security company. Executive protection, event security, specialized services for high-end clients. Needed a young, strong guy who could follow orders and keep his mouth shut. Why would you trust me with something like that? I asked. You just met me. I was about to kill myself. Frank looked me dead in the eyes. Because a man pushed to the edge who chooses to step back has something worth living for, even if he doesn't know it yet. And because if you screw me over, I know exactly how to find you. For the next 6 months, I lived in Frank's guest room, worked for his company. He was a hard ass, 5 a.m. workouts, strict rules, no alcohol on work nights. Made me go to the doctor for my injuries, paid the bills himself, said I'd pay him back when I got on my feet. But he was fair, paid me well, taught me about finance, investing, how to dress and deal with clients, how to be professional again. He also insisted I see a therapist, an old Vietnam vet buddy of his who specialized in PTSD. I resisted at first, but Frank wouldn't take no for an answer. You got your bell rung, son, not just physically. Need to get your head straight if you're gonna work for me. The therapy helped, slowly. Taught me that what happened wasn't my fault, that I didn't deserve it, that I wasn't broken beyond repair. After 6 months, I'd saved enough to rent my own place. A tiny apartment, nothing fancy, just mine, clean and safe. Started taking business management classes at community college. Some specialized security certifications. Frank started to feel like the father I'd lost. He never pushed me to contact my family, never suggested I'd try to clear my name, just said some battles aren't worth fighting. Focus on the war, building a life they can't take from you. After a year working for Frank, he assigned me to handle security for his niece's art gallery opening. Said it was a favor for his sister, but I now realize he was playing matchmaker. Sophie wasn't what I expected. Frank had described her as smart as a whip and doesn't take crap from anyone, which was accurate, but incomplete. She was beautiful in an unconventional way. Tall and athletic, with striking green eyes that seemed to see right through you. Dark hair cut in an asymmetrical style that framed her face elegantly. Not conventionally pretty in a magazine cover way, but stunning in the way she commanded attention just by being present. We didn't hit it off right away. She assumed I was just another muscle-bound security guard with no brain. I assumed she was a stuck-up art snob. During the event, I overheard her explaining an abstract painting to a potential buyer, then rolling her eyes when they left without purchasing. Not everyone gets it, I said, not trying to start a conversation. She looked me up and down, taking in my security suit. And you do? Not really, but I'm not pretending to either. She almost smiled. Almost. Honesty. Refreshing. Throughout the night, I noticed her watching me. Not in a make sure the security guy isn't stealing way. With interest. I was doing my job. Scanning the room, checking doors, keeping an eye on the more expensive pieces. Professional, alert, unobtrusive. She approached me at the end of the night, as I was finishing up and the last guests were leaving. So, Uncle Frank says you're more than just the muscle. I replied. Your uncle talks too much. She laughed. A genuine, nice laugh, not the fake social chuckle I'd heard all night.
Actually, he barely talks at all, which is why when he does, people listen. He says you're going to school? Business management. Yeah, plus some specialized security certifications. Interesting combination. Tell me about it. We talked until 2 a.m. about almost everything except my past. She was intelligent, funny, challenging in all the right ways, well-traveled, had strong opinions on art, politics, music, but also listened to what I had to say. When I finally said I needed to leave because I had an early training session with a new client, she handed me her card. I have a security concern at my condo. Locks need upgrading. Maybe you could give me a consultation. It was a transparent excuse, but I took it. That consultation turned into dinner, then movie nights, then weekends together. Sophie was unlike anyone I'd ever dated. Fiercely independent, passionate about her work, but vulnerable in quiet moments. She'd been hurt too, not in the same way I had, but pain recognizes pain. For months, I avoided talking about my family. When she asked, I made up vague stories, said my parents had died in a car accident, that I was an only child. Sophie sensed I was hiding something, but she didn't push. But Frank insisted I come clean. That girl is falling for you, he said one day at work as we were setting up security for an upcoming event. And you're falling for her. She deserves the truth before this goes any further. He was right. So one night over dinner at my apartment, I told her everything, the whole terrible story. I expected her to leave, to look at me differently, to wonder if maybe Lily hadn't been lying. Instead, she held my hand across the table and said, "Thank you for trusting me. I believe you."
Except for Frank, no one else had said those 3 words to me. I broke down right there at the dinner table, crying like a child. She just held me and let me feel everything. 2 years after we met, I proposed. Did it right. Down on one knee in the same park where we'd had our first real date. Ring in hand, heart racing. Frank walked her down the aisle because her own father had died years before. We bought a small house in a quiet neighborhood, started building a real life. I finished my degree, became a partner in Frank's firm. We expanded from local security to regional, eventually national contracts. Built a reputation for professionalism and discretion. Sophie's art career took off. Her work started appearing in major galleries, fetching serious prices. We talked about starting a family. I was finally happy, finally at peace. The nightmares were less frequent. I could be around kids without panicking. I even reconnected with a few old college friends who reached out after hearing pieces of the true story through mutual acquaintances. My old life felt distant, like it had happened to someone else. I still thought about my family sometimes, wondered if they ever doubted Lily's story, if they ever regretted what they did. But I'd accepted that chapter as closed. I had a new family now, people who chose me and stood by me. That was enough. Or so I thought. It was a random Tuesday in March. I was in my office reviewing security protocols for an upcoming client event. Billionaire tech CEO visiting for a conference who needed discreet protection. My assistant buzzed me on the intercom. "Sir, you have a call on line 1. Woman wouldn't give her name, but says it's a family emergency." My first thought was Sophie or Frank. "Put her through." I picked up the receiver. "Hello? This is Marcus." Silence, then a sob. "Marcus, it's Mum." My body went cold. I hadn't heard her voice in 7 years. I wanted to hang up. I wanted to scream. Instead, I just said, "What do you want?" "Please don't hang up," she begged. "We need to talk to you. It's important." We haven't spoken in 7 years. Nothing could be that important. My voice sounded icy. Lily confessed. She lied about everything. She made it all up. The world stopped. 7 years of suffering, of starting over, of nightmares and panic attacks and therapy, all because of a lie. I knew it was a lie, but hearing her admit it,
Marcus? Are you there? I hung up, walked out of the office, told my assistant to cancel my meetings, drove to Frank's house.